Georgia has not won an NCAA tournament game since 2015. What does Gonzaga need to do to keep it that way?
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com and you'll get 50% off your first year. But we're going to meet the Georgia Bulldogs today. They won 20 games last year. They're one of the biggest teams in college hoops. We're going to talk about what that means for the Zags, what they need to do to make sure they survive and advance to a second round game, likely against the Houston Cougars. Plus, we're going to close out the show talking about the transfer portal because it is already active. The Zags already connected to a big-time player in the portal. We'll get to that to close out the show. But let's start getting you all ready for, of course, the biggest story in Gonzaga basketball right now, the game coming up on Thursday. Number 8 seed Gonzaga Bulldogs in the Midwest region taking on the number 9 seeded Georgia Bulldogs. Also, of course, in the Midwest region, the winner of this game will take on the winner of the 1 seed Houston Cougars, taking on the 16 seed SIU Edwardsville, who is in the NCAA tournament for the very first time. Shout out SIUE, likely not going to win a game here, but of course, still great to be in the big dance. This game is Thursday, March 20th. It starts at 1:35 p.m. Pacific time on TBS. It will be after the game between Houston and SIUE. So best course of action for those of you who are going to be watching college hoops all day long on Thursday. Get TBS up starting at 11 a.m. Watch this Houston SIUE game. And then shortly after that game concludes, you should get the Gonzaga Georgia game after that. And it's close to being a standalone game, which is pretty rare on the first 4 days of the NCAA tournament. There's usually 2, sometimes 3, 4 games going on all at once. But this game will, of course, be after Houston SIUE, and then VCU BYU, which is an 11 seed VCU versus 6 seed BYU. That game starts at 1:05 Pacific time. So that game will be staggered with the Gonzaga game. But other than that, those are going to be, for a while, probably the only 2 games that are on. So it should be kind of fun for a lot of folks to get to see this Gonzaga team and this Georgia team squaring off on Thursday afternoon. Let's talk about Georgia. This is not a basketball school. It's not. There's a lot of schools in the SEC that until very recently have not been anywhere close to being basketball schools. Basically, Kentucky was the basketball school in the SEC. Periodically, you would see some of those other programs step up, but Bama, Auburn, most notably, have really rocketed up, becoming kind of real basketball schools as top 2 teams in the country at one point. Florida's obviously had their ups and downs, but they're very, very good right now. And it kind of goes all the way down the line. That's why you see 7/8 of the SEC, 14 out of 16 teams in that conference, only LSU and South Carolina held out of the field. Georgia, if you want to put a great example of the depth and talent in the SEC and the respect from the committee, Georgia was a 10 seed in the SEC tournament. They earned a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament. That gives you a pretty good sign of what this league looked like this year. But for Georgia, this is their first NCAA tournament appearance since 2015. They won a first-round game back in 2015. They have not made the big dance since then. So Gonzaga's entire streak of making the Sweet 16 has coincided with Georgia not being in the NCAA tournament. They were a 10 seed under Coach Mark Fox. They lost to Michigan State in the second round in that tournament. They had 3 more years of Mark Fox, who then ended up going to Cal and struggling with the Golden Bears. And they got 4 years of Tom Crean, and that was just a bad era for Georgia hoops. The four Tom Crean years did not pay out. Now they're in their 3rd year with Coach Mike White, and we've seen steady growth and improvement. Obviously, I think a larger conversation for another time would be the amount of money flowing through these programs in the SEC, and particularly a program like Georgia that's had massive success on the football side. Some of that money does spill over to programs like basketball, so they're able to land some better talent. They have a marquee coach in Mike White, and so you're seeing that success kind of start to turn around for Georgia. This is their 6th NCAA tournament appearance since the year 2000. So again, it's not like they've just been in a dry spell lately. This team just hasn't been much of a significant player in the basketball space, at least not the men's basketball space, for the last 25 years or so. But this year, they went 20-12. They went 8-10 in the SEC, which, again, we've talked about. You finish below 500 in conference, you shouldn't make the tournament. The SEC was just so good that there's team. I mean, Texas is in the tournament. I think they went like 5-12 or something. It could have been 5-13, maybe something like that. I think that maybe that was Oklahoma's record. Regardless, there were teams that were well below 500 in the SEC who made the NCAA tournament. It's just the nature of the beast in that conference. It also helped that Georgia was 12-1 in the non-conference. And while, yes, a lot of those were against bye game type opponents, quad 4, quad 3 games, their only loss in the non-conference was on a neutral Florida Marquette. Certainly not a bad loss by any stretch of the imagination. And they had some decent wins. 4 of their non-conference wins were against teams that are currently 100 or higher in KenPom, the most notable by a significant amount being their win over Rick Pitino and St. John's, who earned a 2 seed in this NCAA tournament. This was kind of before St. John's found their groove, but that's a win that aged extremely well for Mike White and Georgia. They also beat Grand Canyon, they beat Notre Dame, and they beat Georgia Tech. None of those were great wins. I said all 4 of these teams are above 100 at KenPom. Only one of these 4 teams is above 90 at KenPom, and that's, of course, St. John's. I think as of at least Tuesday evening when I put the notes together, I think Grand Canyon was 93rd, Notre Dame was 98th, and Georgia Tech was like 99th or 100th. So, again, judging based on KenPom, current KenPom data is not super indicative, but this team had a quality non-conference performance. And again, 8-10 in a very, very, very good SEC. That included, they beat Kentucky, they beat Oklahoma, they beat Florida, who's a number 1 seed, and they beat Texas. Like, those are all very, very good wins, and you don't really take a lot of bad losses in the SEC. Like I said, they did earn a 10 seed in the SEC tournament, had an opportunity to win a game or 2 there and really boost their stock. Unfortunately for them, were unable to do so. They lost to the 14 seed Oklahoma Sooners, again, a 14 seed in the SEC tournament. Oklahoma got a 9 seed also in the NCAA tournament, but that loss ended their season a little bit early for Georgia and got them in a position where they earned this 9 seed as opposed to, I don't know, they would have had to win a big game to probably climb all the way out to the 7 seed range. But again, they would have had the opportunity to do so. KenPom has Georgia at number 34 right now. Their adjusted offensive efficiency is 54th, but their adjusted defensive efficiency, they are a borderline top 25 team, sitting at 26th right now. Their tempo, according to KenPom, is 220 seconds, so they play pretty slow. They play very good defense, but they're also a quality offensive team, particularly on the interior. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the stats for Georgia, the things they're good at, the things they're not so good at in our Keys to Victory segment, kind of looking at what Gonzaga needs to do to win this basketball game. But I want to give you a few names to know, notably Asa Newell. We've talked about him a little bit already the last couple of days because the biggest storyline, besides both these teams being G Bulldogs, which I think is a fun storyline, the biggest storyline is Asa Newell, star freshman for Georgia, who was recruited heavily by Gonzaga in this most recent recruiting class. It was him and Zoom Diallo were the 2 big targets for the Zags. Zoom Diallo eventually goes to Washington. Asa Newell goes to Georgia, where his brother had played. He had a lot of connections there. So it was a tough sell for Gonzaga to try to get him to come all the way out to Spokane, way away from his family. And Georgia was the beneficiary, and he was fantastic this year. He's going to be a lottery pick, very likely going to be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft as a one-and-done freshman. He averaged 15.3 points, 6.8 rebounds, 1 block, 1 steal, and just about 1 assist per game. He shot about 62.5% on his 2-point attempts this year. Not a great 3-point shooter. I think that, like, from an NBA draft perspective, I think you think, oh, this is a dude who's going to shoot the 3 ball well. He's 6'11". He's got a good-looking shot. He's a decent free throw shooter, but practically for this season, at least, he shot just under 30% on about 3 attempts per game. So he basically goes 1 of 3 most games, getting about 75% from the line. Big thing for Newell, he's a great offensive rebounder. 6.8 rebounds per game, 3.3 of them come on the offensive glass. Genuinely one of the best offensive rebounders in the country. Gonzaga's already faced one of the best offensive rebounders in the country 3 times this year in Mitchell Saxon, so they are at least familiar with going up against guys who are great on the offensive glass. But Newell is a different animal. He's a much better scorer than Saxon is. Not as big, not as wide as Mitchell Saxon, but a better player overall, and somebody who's going to be a huge problem for Gonzaga in this game. Also got to shout out their 2 sophomore guards, 6'5" Silas Demery Jr. and 6'5" guard Blue Kane. Demery's averaging 13.5 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, and just under 2 steals per game. He's their only good 3-point shooter. 37.5% on about 5 attempts per game. So he is a quality three-point shooter. He's about 80% from the line on about 5 attempts per game. Blue Cane, 9.5 points per game, about 4 boards, 1.5 assists, a little over 1 steal per game as well. Not as good of a three-point shooter, a little under 34% on about 4 attempts per game. He is, however, a great free throw shooter, just over 86%, although he only gets to the line about twice per game. Well, like we said, Georgia, as a team, elite on the offensive glass, but they can also get a little sloppy with the basketball. Turnovers an issue for the Bulldogs. We're going to talk about what all this means for Gonzaga, all of that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. And with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. So whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring people simple and affordable. If you need help with the marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. So posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, multiple qualified candidates you will have to choose from. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. So visit Upwork.com right now to post your job for free. That's Upwork.com, UPWORK, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Today's episode is also brought to you by Fabric. Folks, life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. And that's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. As a parent, I want to make sure my family is financially protected no matter what happens, and Fabric gives me that peace of mind. You can get $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day, so protecting your loved ones, it doesn't have to break the bank. Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help you plan your children's future. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we are still getting ready for Gonzaga's first round matchup of the 2025 NCAA Tournament on Thursday early afternoon against the Georgia Bulldogs. We talked about star freshman Asa Newell, pair of backcourt mates in Blue Cane and Silas Demery Jr. for the Bulldogs, a little bit about this team's history. Now I want to talk about what Gonzaga needs to do to make sure they're leaving Thursday with a victory, setting themselves up for a chance to continue their Sweet 16 streak with the battle against Houston on Saturday. Here are 5 keys to a Gonzaga victory against Georgia on Thursday. Number 1, this is always a key for Gonzaga in their first game in the NCAA tournament, and it will be at least for one more year. We'll see what happens in the Pac-12, but you got to start fast and you got to shake off the rust because Gonzaga won't have played for 9 days. Their last game was March 11th. This game will be March 20th. 9-day gap between games. Because the WCC tournament is one of the first ones, even though Gonzaga always plays in the last game of the WCC tournament, it often sets them up for being in a position where they haven't played for a week and a half or so, like in this case. And the team they're playing often has played far more recently. Now that's not actually the case in this specific game because Georgia, since they lost their first game in the SEC tournament, their last game was Wednesday the 12th. So there's only there's a 9-day gap between Gonzaga's games, 8-day gap between Georgia's games. So both teams are going to be coming into this game having not played game action for over a week. It's incredibly important for Gonzaga to come out strong to dictate the pace in this game. They want to play at their speed. They want to play at their tempo. They want to make Georgia adjust to them. And you can't kind of sleepwalk through the first 8 to 10 minutes of this game. We saw that Gonzaga do that a lot this year. It got better as the season went on. They kind of stopped doing that in the last couple weeks of the season for the most part, but it was an issue pretty regularly. And while you can stomach a bad first 10 minutes against Portland or Pepperdine or whomever, you can't really do that against a team like Georgia. So I think for the Zags team, you got to come out fast. You got to set up the tempo and you got to make Georgia react to you setting that tempo. Otherwise, it could be a long night for the Zags on Thursday. Key number 2 for the Zags is to capitalize on Georgia's turnover issues. Get steals, get out in transition. This is critical. Georgia's turnover rate is very high this year, just under 19% at 18.9%, 291st in the country, according to KenPom. They turn the ball over a lot. Their steal rate, meaning the amount of times that they have the ball stolen from them, is about 11.8%, which is about 350th in the country. The team turns the ball over a ton. Other teams are able to get that ball, get out in transition. Yes, playing in the SEC against guys like Zakai Ziegler at Tennessee and insert basically any other SEC guards. There's a ton of very, very, very good defensive guards in the SEC. So sure, that maybe boosts these numbers a little bit for Georgia. But we also just saw a Gonzaga team get 12 steals against St. Mary's in their most recent game in the WCC Championship. We saw Caleb Battle get 5 steals in that game. This Gonzaga team is capable of knocking the ball loose, getting steals, and getting out in transition, and I think it's a really important part of this game. It goes back a little bit to that first key about being able to set the tempo. If Georgia wants to play slow, and they're going to try to limit your possession, which is always a good strategy against Gonzaga, where if they get the amount of possessions they want, they're going to beat you 99 times out of 100. One way to make sure you get extra possessions and you get quick buckets in a game where those might be hard to come by is out in transition. Best way to get out in transition, get steals, get deflections, knock the ball loose, force turnovers, get out and run. Again, it also helps if you do that early in the game, shaking off that rust, building up a lead, establishing kind of your will, imposing your will on this game. I think there's a lot of key advantages for Gonzaga in terms of trying to force those turnovers. And Georgia doesn't actually turn the ball over a ton outside of giving up steals. Like, they're pretty good at avoiding like the offensive fouls and the shot clock violations and things of that nature. They're pretty average, I should say, not like elite in that area. But for Gonzaga, if you can get steals, if you can force this team to turn the ball over, the loose dribbling, get the ball, get out in transition, it's a huge advantage in a basketball game that's going to come down to the wire, very likely. Key number 3, you got to keep Asa Newell off the glass. We talked about it a little bit in the first segment. He's a phenomenal rebounder. He's a phenomenal offensive rebounder, one of the best offensive rebounders in the country, period. The Zags are used to this with Mitchell Saxon. And Mitchell Saxon in particular was very good at tipping the ball back to the Georgia guards, to the St. Mary's guards to keep possessions alive. While Georgia does not play at the same exact tempo of St. Mary's, they do play slow, and there's nothing more frustrating than playing good defense, forcing a missed shot, and then giving up an offensive rebound. Now, unlike Saxon, who either tips the ball back or even when he does get a rebound, tends to kick it out and let St. Mary's reset that slow, methodical offense, Asa Newell is going to get offensive rebounds, and he's going to try to score. And he's going to be good at that. And so I think if you're Gonzaga, not only do you have to keep Newell off the glass, you have to be ready to, if he does get offensive rebounds or when he gets offensive rebounds, he's going to try to score, and he's going to try to score and get fouled. And he's pretty good at that. And again, I can't think of a more frustrating situation than Gonzaga playing good defense for 27 seconds, forcing a missed shot. Newell gets a rebound. Ike turns to try to defend him / grab the rebound. Newell goes up with it, scores, gets fouled. Like, that is something that Newell did to teams game after game after game in the regular season. And if he does that to Gonzaga, it's going to be a significant problem. And it leads into key number 4, which is force this team to make outside shots. Keep them out of the paint and keep them off the free throw line as much as you can. This is obviously much easier said than done, but it's pretty simple reasoning because Georgia is a very good 2-point shooting team. They shoot about 52.5% on their 2-point attempts. That ranks about 78th in the country. They're just about a top 75 team in terms of 2-point field goal percentage. But they only shoot 33.5% from 3. That's 194th. This is an actively bad 3-point shooting team who really only has one player who is a good 3-point shooter in Silas Demery. But they are a very good 2-point scoring team, and they have a ton of size. They're big, they're long. Newell's a great scorer down low. Their guards are all 6'5", 6'4". They can get to the rim. They can get to the free throw line. You have to make this team shoot and make open threes. If Georgia wins this game by shooting and making a bunch of threes, if Georgia makes 12-plus threes, 15-plus threes, you kind of tip your hat. Obviously, if Gonzaga's giving them a bunch of open threes, you're going to be frustrated about it, but this is not a good 3-point shooting team. I would rather make them beat you that way. If you work really hard to defend the perimeter, and in doing so, you allow their guards to get into the paint, to get to the free throw line, put Graham Ike in foul trouble, and you lose that way, that's incredibly frustrating because you didn't have to do that. Make them beat you from the 3-point line. And again, 2 rotation players over 34% from 3. One of them is Demery, one of them is Dakota LeFou, and he's like barely over 34% and doesn't play all that much. The team does shoot about 21 threes per game, though, so you can get them to shoot a lot of threes. I could see a reality where Georgia shoots 5 of 20-something from 3, and that's a big time advantage for Gonzaga because, frankly, the Zags probably aren't going to shoot all that well from 3 because they typically don't, and Georgia's a good defensive team. So if both teams are shooting bad from 3, I trust Gonzaga's interior offense to do enough to get them a W in this game. But again, the free throw shooting is an issue here as well. This team is 31st in the country in terms of free throw attempts per game, about 22.5 per game. They're actually not a great free throw shooting team, 71.7%, which is 203rd. So they don't make a ton of free throws, but if they're getting to the line, that's going to be problematic for Graham Ike, for Braden Huff, for Ben Gregg, whomever it may be who's picking up those fouls. It could be a problem for Gonzaga because it's going to test their bench. And then key number 5, again, they're all a little bit connected here. But key number 5 for Gonzaga, play the bigs together. I'm really curious if this will happen. We talked about it a little bit after the St. Mary's game when they started Braden Huff alongside Graham Ike, the first time those two guys had started together. And we thought, well, this makes sense when you're playing a team for the 3rd time on the year. You're playing a team that has a lot of the same personnel you saw last year. So it's kind of like the 5th, 6th time that these guys have squared off against each other. You do something different. You force St. Mary's on their heels a little bit because they weren't expecting it. You set the tempo and you go on and win the game just like Gonzaga did against the Gales. But we weren't sure if they were going to do it again. And it was kind of one of the things we talked about was it's probably matchup dependent. Georgia's the 9th tallest team in the country. They're an elite rebounding team with a ton of size. This might be the matchup where you deploy the 2 bigs. I don't know if Mark Few will start them together. And I think that Mark Few is incredibly happy that I don't know that because that means Georgia doesn't know that. That means Houston doesn't know that. They don't know what exactly Mark Few's strategy is going to be, whether they're going to start together, whether they're going to go with the normal starting lineup of Ben Gregg, whether these 2 bigs are going to play at the same time at all in this game or not at all. They don't really know. They have to game plan for all of it. And when Gonzaga plays both Huff and Ike together, it's 2 incredibly dominant low post paint touch guys. It means that whatever of Georgia's weaker interior defensive players, they're going to exploit that matchup. It's what they did against St. Mary's, where they just let Huff go to work against Paulus Morauskas. It gives Gonzaga an advantage on the glass. And this is a little bit unique because Braden Huff's not a better rebounder than Ben Gregg or Michael Ajayi, specifically not Michael Ajayi. Gonzaga's best rebounding lineup probably almost certainly has Ajayi in the game and probably doesn't feature Huff in the game, but he's got enough size that he can at least try to keep Newell off the glass and try to kind of prevent Georgia from utilizing their size in a way that Gonzaga is unable to counter. So that's something I'm really interested in. I also would just mention that Michael Ajayi needs to play well in this game. The bench in general needs to play well in this game, whether it's Huff or not, but Ajayi is such a good rebounder. He fancies himself an NBA player. He wanted to go to the NBA draft last year. He decided to come back to school. A really good way to reboost your draft stock after a pedestrian year is go look good next to Asa Newell. Go out there and play well in any matchup you have against him or just in this tournament at all. Very excited to see what he can do in his first NCAA tournament game. I think he's a big X factor for the Zags, not just for his rebounding and defense, but potentially as an offensive weapon off the bench as well. I think there's a lot to Ajayi's performance in this game. I think will have a lot of impact on how the Zags do overall. Well, folks, the NCAA tournament is just getting underway, but so too is the transfer portal, and the Zags have their eye on a high-scoring big man coming out of the Big Ten. We got more on that coming up in just a second. But first, folks, have you ever checked your bank account and wondered where the heck did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Today's episode is also brought to you by the fine folks at Varsity Icons. Get ready to bring your favorite Zags to life. VarsityIcons.com delivers the ultimate collection of action figures that honors both current and former Zags. Varsity Icons is the premier sports collectible figure for your Gonzaga Bulldogs. And today we are highlighting everybody's fan favorite, Big Ben Gregg. Varsity Icons was started by a longtime Gonzaga Bulldogs fan who wanted to create collectible figures of everyone's all-time favorite Zags. The mission of Varsity Icons is to create figures of current and former Zags for everybody to collect and enjoy. And there's no question that Varsity Icons wanted to highlight Ben Gregg to be their first player. He's been a fan favorite since joining the Zags back in 2021. Ben exemplifies what it means to be a Gonzaga Bulldog every time he steps on the court. We are excited to create more of your favorite Zags in the future, so stay tuned and order your Varsity Icons Ben Gregg figure today at varsityicons.com. Varsity Icons, where icons live forever.
The NCAA Tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA Tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and briefly going away from the NCAA tournament because, as we've talked about the last couple of years, the transfer portal and the offseason just never, ever, ever stops. Last year was like the most condensed offseason we've seen from Gonzaga in a while because the year before that they added Pavle Stosic in late September. They added Luka Krajinovic in like August or something like that. Like they were literally just finagling with the roster all offseason long last year because Mark Few made a little trip out to Paris, France to take home a gold medal in the Paris Games. There was not as much movement, but still we saw Gonzaga add Jalen Warley to the roster during the school year after Tony Bennett's surprise retirement caused him to hit the transfer portal out of Virginia. And now we're not even in the offseason yet, and already Gonzaga is being connected to a high-profile player who has entered the transfer portal. This would be Iowa big man Owen Freeman. The report from Joe Tipton of On3 is that Gonzaga is one of 4 schools known to be in contact with Freeman, alongside John Calipari in Arkansas, Dusty May at Michigan, and then, of course, Greg McDermott in Creighton. All 4 programs currently in the NCAA tournament as well. So there's nobody getting an advantage in the pursuit of Owen Freeman in the sense that they're all still trying to balance getting ready for their upcoming NCAA tournament game while taking a look at adding a big-time player for their future roster. Freeman's a 6'10" sophomore. He entered the transfer portal. The portal officially opens for everybody on March 24th. By the way, so when I'm saying he entered the portal, I don't mean like he's speculating that he's going to enter the portal. He entered the portal officially because Fran McCaffrey, the head coach for the Iowa Hawkeyes, was fired after the season. It was kind of a foregone conclusion that was going to happen for Fran after 15 years coaching the Hawkeyes. So when your coach is fired or dismissed or leaves or whatever, you then have a 30-day window to open the transfer portal, period. So Owen Freeman is officially in the portal. Just a clarifying point there that it's not a speculative thing. That's why we're already seeing programs that are reaching out to him because they can, because of the rules around the transfer portal and coaches departing. Freeman was fantastic last year in 19 games, 16.7 points, 6.7 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks per game. He shot 66.5% on 2-pointers. That's like Drew Timme levels of efficient on 2-point shots. Graham Ike has been great, but he's like 61%, like 66% on 2-pointers. Very, very good. Not much of a 3-point shooter, 31%, but only 16 attempts, 5 of 16, from the 3-point line. So he's not spacing the floor really, but he is a great low post scorer, great footwork. You're going to see a lot of Drew Timme and that kind of player, Filip Petrusev, the low post, give me the ball, let me go to work type of situation. He only played 19 games last year because he had a finger injury that cost him the last 6 weeks of the season. Prior to his sophomore year, Freeman was the Big Ten Freshman of the Year in 2023-24, where he averaged 10.5 points, 6.5 boards, and about 2 blocks in 23 minutes per game. There's a lot to like about Owen Freeman. He's a really good fit for Gonzaga. And just if you watch a video of him, I know I posted some on the Locked On Zags Instagram account. You can find it very easily when players enter the portal. There's always video packages of them out on YouTube or other places. You watch the tape of him, you can see the appeal. He's got fancy footwork. He loves scoring on the low block. He's a built for college basketball player, built for a offense that has a lot of paint touches, that values high usage bigs who get the ball on the block and go to work and try to score. That's Gonzaga to a T. Like it's a very obvious why the Zags would be interested in Owen Freeman. I watched multiple videos of Freeman, but after about the first 30 seconds of the first video, I was like, yeah, okay, it's easy to see why he makes sense for the Zags. He's also a good rim protector. 2 blocks per game, just about, in each of his first 2 seasons in the Big Ten against quality guards and quality size and talented players like that. So Freeman is somebody who can contribute to this team on the defensive end of the floor in ways that we haven't really had. He's not going to be Brandon Clark or Chet Holmgren levels of eraser necessarily, but probably going to be better than Graham Ike and then Braden Huff as defenders on the block. So that's an area that Gonzaga hasn't had a lot of rim protection really historically outside of those 2 big names. And Freeman's somebody who could really bring that. In terms of roster construction, obviously we don't know the full scope of what Gonzaga's roster is going to look like next year, but we do know that Ben Gregg is out of eligibility. And so this will be his final season. So there is at least 1 spot open in the front court. Graham Ike has 1 more year. We're not sure if he's going to use it. He's been in college since 2020. He's going to have been, it wouldn't be surprising to see Graham Ike move on after this year, even though he does have another year of eligibility. He may come back, but he also, I think a lot of people expect him to leave. Again, I have no inside information on this, just something to keep an eye on. Michael Ajayi, kind of a unique situation for him. He was expected to this to be his only year. He played 2 years at the junior college level, 1 year at Pepperdine, 1 year at Gonzaga. That's 4 years done after this. However, a new ruling came out, the junior college years. They're going to look into whether junior college years should count against your 4 years of eligibility. While they're looking into that, players who would have ran out of eligibility at the end of this year have been given an extra year. So Michael Ajayi has another year to choose to use to come back to Gonzaga, to enter the transfer portal, or to just go to the NBA and move on with his professional career. So we don't know what Michael Ajayi is going to do yet. So we know Ben Gregg's gone. We don't know what Graham Ike and Michael Ajayi are doing. The expectation is that Braden Huff and Ismaila Diani are both back. So it makes sense that Gonzaga is looking to add to the front court. They have players coming in for next year. Braden Smith redshirting and on the bench. Jalen Warley is redshirting and on the bench. Davis Fogel's an incoming freshman. None of them are bigs. Warley's a 6'7" wing. Fogel's a 6'7" wing. Smith's a 6'3" point guard. So the Zags need add some depth in the front court. The Zags showing interest in a player like Freeman doesn't tell me anything specifically about Graham Ike. I think some people read into this and say, well, the Zags must know that Graham Ike is leaving. Not necessarily. It would be not smart of Gonzaga to not check in on a player like Owen Freeman. Again, if you're doubting it, watch the tape. He makes so much sense. So Gonzaga, you're not doing your job if you're not checking in on a guy like that. Maybe he says, hey, I'm only going there if Graham's leaving, and you say, okay, well, we don't know what Graham's doing, but keep us in mind. And he says, oh, I don't want to wait. I'm going to go somewhere else. That might happen. That's happened to Gonzaga before. It could happen again. He might say, yes, I want to go there regardless. I'm in, sign me up. They commit, they sign him and say, all right, you're coming in. And then Graham and Braden have to figure out, well, what do we want to do? What's, now we know this other guy's coming in. They may do that and say, okay, we're going to create a log jam and we're going to figure it out after this. Freeman may not end up coming to Gonzaga at all because he's just not interested in it. There's tons of different things that could happen, but the only way nothing happens is if you don't pursue him. So of course it makes sense that Gonzaga is going to look at this very, very talented player who has super high upside in their specific system. I wouldn't read into it meaning anything about Ike or Ajayi or Huff or anybody on this roster at this point. Again, if the Zags weren't reaching out to high profile players, that would be a problem. I'm glad they're doing it. Doesn't necessarily mean they'll land them. Doesn't necessarily mean that the interest is super high on either side, but they have to be reaching out. So this is definitely a storyline to keep an eye on. We're going to obviously have tons more coverage on the transfer portal after the season, but can't miss mentioning a really big name that's already being connected to the Zags as the transfer portal really hasn't quite gotten fully underway just yet. It's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Check out the bracket breakdown. If you have not done so yet, it's on Amazon Fire TVs. Just go there. You'll find the March Madness Hub. Tons of video clips of myself, my co-host Isaac Shade from Locked On College Basketball. We're also joined by Kylan Mills, Monique Billings, and former NBA All-Star and Butler legend Gordon Hayward, all hanging out, talking college hoops, talking about this bracket. It's definitely worth checking out if you have not done so yet. Thanks again for listening, folks. We'll have a show right after the game on Thursday, so be ready. We're going to be going live right after Gonzaga takes on Georgia, so look out for that in your feeds as well. Thanks again. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and now more than ever, go Zags.